Verstappen and Red Bull had yet another dominant showing, and it seems like this will be the outcome of the entire 2023 season, according to their rivals' statements. But Russell doesn't think that what we're currently seeing from the Austrian team is the full potential of the RB19, and he's made a shocking accusation towards Red Bull. If this turns out to be the truth, then who knows what the repercussions for Red Bull will be. Join us as we go through some of the most controversial takes by Russell amid one of the most monotonous seasons in F1. Max Verstappen won yet another GP in 2023, and although this is just his second win, the fact that we've only had 3 races so far and the lead to P2 was a very dominating one goes to show that the RB19 is truly a machine that cannot be beaten just like that. The Australian GP did see both Mercedes drivers going past the Dutchman, but after the DRS battle was enabled, Verstappen didn't have too much of a struggle to get past Hamilton, as Russell entered the pit lane during the first safety car. Perez also managed to climb to P5 after a devastating qualifying session that saw him starting from the pit lane, and with a little bit of luck he was able to climb the ladder and finish high in the points. However, Verstappen's showing in Jeddah, where he started on lap 15 and finished on lap 2, was by far more impressive, as he came to this place on lap 25 out of 50. Therefore, Russell believes that the RB19 is hiding some pace in order to fly under the radar and prevent the FIA from intervening and making racing more interesting. Verstappen being passed by both Mercedes drivers in the first lap was truly an interesting sight, and although we thought that it would bring a lot of interesting developments ahead of us, we were proven wrong. The dominance of the Dutchman was something that we couldn't cope with, as he himself confirmed there was absolutely no need to fight both Mercedes drivers during the start of the race. According to Verstappen, when you have a quick car in your hands, losing 1 or 2 spots is definitely not the end of the world, and by this, we could see that the RB19 may be hiding some performance in order to not make the whole racing process so boring and dominant. But why would they hide performance in times like this, when you could be as competitive as you wanted under such strict regulations? Well, the answer is very simple. The FIA wants to ensure that racing will be an interesting and anticipated process, unlike the 2014 to 2020 period, which caused the sport a great loss in popularity. Mercedes dominated the entirety of the turbo hybrid era, and Hamilton and Rosberg, then from 2017 onwards, Bottas, were able to win races almost a minute ahead of their competition. But now, Mercedes is the one that took a cheap shot at Red Bull, as Russell thinks that the car is not showing its true potential in the first 3 races. Even with that, Red Bull is able to dominate the rest of the grid, and it's not even close. One prime example of how dominant the RB19 actually is when Verstappen went a bit wide into the penultimate turn of the race and lost 2 seconds to Hamilton just by this mistake. However, in the next lap, Verstappen was able to push his car to the absolute maximum, gaining 1 second of the time he had lost to Hamilton in such a short span. This, according to Russell, is what makes him believe that Red Bull is not presenting its full pace to the world, as he went on to say, "For sure, they're holding back. I think they're almost embarrassed to show their full potential, because the faster they seem, the more that the sport is going to try and hold them back somehow. I think realistically they probably have 7/10 advantage over the rest of the field. I don't know what the pace difference looks like at the moment, but Max has got no reason to be pushing it, nor has Red Bull. They've done a really great job, to be fair to them. We can't take that away, and we clearly have to up our game." Now, we're not saying that Russell isn't on the right track, and quite frankly, there's a high possibility that Red Bull is holding a bit of pace behind. However, when you have competitors that just can't make the most of the new technical regulations, especially with Mercedes getting it all wrong in 2022, why would you push your car to the maximum when there's absolutely no need to? Keep in mind that in the middle of the season, we're expected to see a drop in the performance of Red Bull due to the sporting penalty actually taking a huge swing in the development of the car. As the new upgrades start arriving at their rivals, Red Bull won't be able to maximise the ones on the RB19, especially because they won't be able to run their car in the wind tunnel as much as they'd want it to. However, we've seen that the pace has improved a bit from Mercedes, and keep in mind that the Silver Arrows are yet to introduce a new model to their car, one that's supposed to bring the glory and the fame back to Brackley. Although Wolff said that there's no chance that Mercedes can compete with Red Bull in 2023, who would have thought that they would finish second and third on Saturday and have such a great start to the race on Monday? Sure, what happened to Russell is something that definitely needs to be addressed sooner rather than later, because reliability is basically the most important thing that an F1 car needs to have, apart from the speed, but the signals we've been receiving from Mercedes are truly promising. Helmut Marko has also said that he believes the gap between Red Bull and its rivals is now closing, and we may not see such a dominant outing from the RB19 in the upcoming races. Baku is one race where upgrades should arrive for Red Bull's fiercest rivals, so this may be a huge challenge for the Austrian team in terms of surviving the attacks of the angry W14 and F175 cars behind them. When talking about the gap between Red Bull and its rivals, Marko said, "You can see how close it is when a little thing doesn't work out, because we're always said to have a superiority that only exists when everything is running smoothly. Our rivals, Aston Martin, Ferrari and Mercedes, have made gains." What we're currently seeing may be good for Red Bull, as Horner previously said that nothing would delight him more than a monotonous season in which the RB19 would pass the checkered flag first in as many races as possible. But it's definitely not a good thing for the sport. The popularity and the anticipation will drop to the lowest point possible, but to be honest, we don't have anybody to blame other than Red Bull's rivals. The Austrian team was able to understand and implement the 2022 technical regulations better than anybody else, so we can't scrutinise them for doing what they were supposed to do, winning races with a brand new car. The same regulations were applied to every team out there, and even when Mercedes tried to take down Red Bull and Ferrari by thinking that their floors flexed much more than allowed, they were proven horribly wrong. When the regulation tweak happened in Spa last year, we saw that Red Bull wasn't affected a single bit, as Verstappen went on to win the race after starting P14. Although Mercedes has a lot to be grateful for after the pace that they've presented in Australia, this was definitely not the development path that they had in front of themselves prior to the beginning of the 2023 season. Sure, we're seeing improvements, but could it be that there's so much drama going on in Brackley right now that the only thing they can do is just blame other teams for holding off on pace so that the FIA won't try to penalise them and make racing more interesting? Hamilton has also spoken about the pace of the RB19, saying that it's definitely the most dominant car that he's ever seen in his career. However, Alonso was quick to remind him that it was not long ago when he was able to win 5 championships thanks to a superior car in his hand, as the Spaniard has yet again proven to the world that there's still a bit of bad blood between each other, even though they try to hide it in front of the camera with sugar-coated statements. With this in mind, what do you think about Red Bull holding off on pace? Do you think that Verstappen and Perez are deliberately hiding pace so that the FIA won't catch them having a super dominant car, even though that's been proven in 2023 so far? Let us know in the comments below.